so much. I love you so much. I love you so much. I love you so much.
Hello, all you positive heads out there. Thanks for tuning your beautiful brainwaves into another episode of the Positive Head Podcast, where we are firmly convinced that creating success and happiness is rooted in understanding the ultimate nature of reality and the fact that as human beings, we are all immensely powerful fractals of the one and only source consciousness, which creates and animates all things. Now, of course, understanding this powerful truth is one thing. Applying this incredibly empowering wisdom to everyday life? Well, that's another, which is exactly why we provide you with a fresh serving of soul food for thought 5 days a week to help constantly remind you of what matters most. You are it. And I'm your host, Brandon Beecham. I'm the reflection and extension of you who will be here each Wednesday interviewing a different consciousness changemaker. And on the other 4 weekdays, leading the way to ensure that your perspective is consistently expanded, your vibration is constantly elevated, and your heart is overflowing and full. Also, before we jump into today's episode, I'd like to take a moment to tell you about a few sponsors that not only help to make it possible to produce this show 5 days a week, but that I'm also genuinely passionate about promoting, especially since they're helping to fund all the cool projects we have in the works, such as the Positive Head app, the docuseries that I'm intending to begin shooting within the next year, and whatever else we dream up over here at Positive Headquarters to help spread consciousness across the planet. Now, if you're short on time or just super excited for today's topic and want to dive right in and skip these ads, feel free to fast forward about
2.5 minutes
to get right into today's show. That being said, I strongly encourage you to listen because the reason I'm passionate about my sponsors is because they've made a huge impact in my own life, which is why I've aligned with these organizations. And I firmly believe they can do the same for you too. The first longtime stellar supporter of the show that I want to mention is Gaia. If you're not familiar, Gaia is the go-to source for streaming consciousness content online with over 8,000 video titles. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positive head. That's spelled GAIA.com/positive head. The second sponsor I'm extremely passionate about promoting is Purium. The reason I've aligned Positive Head with Purium is because I wholeheartedly stand behind their mission to end human suffering by making superfoods easily available to everyone, with the ultimate goal to help restore mankind's harmony with nature in the process. I mean, what a noble mission, right? It's no mystery that you need to bring your mind, body, and spirit into balance if a person truly intends to manifest the greatest and grandest version of themselves. And for me, for years, I honestly felt like I was ahead of the curve in the mind and spirit category, but I was only average at best in the level of care I administered to my body. Sure, I was healthy-ish when it came to the food I put into my system, but after doing a Purium 40-day transformation with a 10-day metabolic reset and cleanse, I can honestly say I have reestablished my relationship with food in a very positive way. Not only did I drop the extra weight that I was carrying as a natural byproduct of the transformation so that I'm now at my ideal body weight, but I continue to feel like my best self by starting every day with an organic Purium power shake that is made from raw superfood ingredients that were meticulously harvested, thoughtfully combined to optimize the nutritional impact it has on my body. I view the shake as plant medicine, really, and it happens to taste really delicious, and I can make it in about 30 seconds. There's actually 4 core Purium products that I take every day, and honestly, I intend to do so for the rest of my life for a very scientifically sound reason. And if you want to learn more about those reasons, you can go check out my video at positivehead.com/transformation, where I go into more detail. If you end up buying any of the Purium products, be sure and use the code POSITIVEHEAD, all one word, for a 25% discount. All right, all you positive heads, on this week's powwow episode, I'm very excited to have thought leader, life coach, and author Kim Fiske here with me on the show. Kim, hello. So happy to have you in my presence today.
Thanks. I'm very excited to be here, and I'm always thankful when I get to talk about my message and meet new people.
Yes, indeed. Our mutual friend, Matt Belair from the Matt Belair podcast, recommended that I sit down with you, and I always pay attention when Matt recommends someone because he always has a great recommendation. So we kind of kick guests back and forth sometimes, and so yeah, I checked out some of your episode with
Matt.
him. Oh, he's so great. He's a great friend, and I recommend you guys checking out his podcast. Actually, if you haven't done it, he was on this one a while back. You can find my powwow with him and vice versa. And yeah, he's a great guy. All right, so let's jump right in. I'm very predictable, Kim, with where I sort of start my opening question and my closing question. And the opening question is this. You're in an elevator. The woman next to you looks over, says, "What's your passion?" You got 10 floors to answer. What do you say?
Okay. Wow. Well, how many other people are in the elevator with us? How about that question? It might depend on what I say.
Yeah, exactly. Just you and the person, so you can keep it. Good. You can get as wild as you want.
Right. Well, so I have been known to go deep quickly, in my communication with people. So depending on the feel of the moment, I will say, well, what I do is actually, let me ask you a question. How many thoughts and feelings do you struggle with of insecurity and not good enough and unworthiness? And do you struggle with any of those thoughts, if you don't mind me asking that? And you know what, a lot of times, Brandon, like sitting on an airplane, even in baggage claim, I've had people, I think I just do this kind of thing naturally where I give permission to people to open up quickly to me, and they'll just go, "Oh my gosh, yes, all the time. That's me. And I'll go, "Well, that's what I help with. I help with people identifying where that comes from and navigating through it, and a lot of times eliminating it." So it's really a passion in life for me to help people be free. So yeah, just that kind of thing.
I love that. It's the biggest, obstacle I feel like everyone needs to overcome is those feelings of unworthiness, shame, insecurity. And, I think once someone can actually do that work, which we're going to dive into deeply, how, your perspective on how to do that, I think it opens up a whole new chapter in your story, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting to see, because I can tell within just a little bit of a conversation if people, their internal, their subconscious, that part of them is ready to deal with this or not. Because a lot of times, based on their reaction to that answer or in a conversation, I just kind of open up that door to, if they're ready, they feel safe, we go there. If they're not, it's interesting. It's kind of like they'll go, "Oh, wow. Okay." Or on a plane, they'll put their headphones on. It's like, okay, it's fine. Not going there today. I got it.
Yep. And you can definitely tell when someone is just like instantly shut down or curious, right? And that's
exactly.
It's obvious. Well, okay. So the other place I like to sort of start is, at the beginning of the podcast, these powwow episodes, is at the beginning of your story. How did you end up, on this track in life? Maybe you can just give us a little insight on, your background.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, this is using my adult brain to look back, but I remember, when I was at four when my parents were officially divorced, but I'm sure there were issues and problems prior to that. And I just remember at 4, my mom and dad got divorced, and it created a huge upheaval in my young life. And, at the time it was my normal. So at the time I remember feeling, it was in the 60s, and we were very much a religious Christian family and fundamental. My mom and dad and my ancestors were even ministers in churches. And I grew up in a very musical family. So, everybody was singing and preaching and, performing. And that was just the environment I grew up in. But I remember feeling back at the time, like none of my other friends' parents were divorced, because that was kind of a really, you guys, if you're listening to this and you're of the newer generations, divorce was not a common thing, especially in Christian
People
homes.
stuck it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And there was a lot of, but so it was weird. And I think that did add to a lot of the shame you talked about. I'll talk more about shame in my metaphor, how it fits in my metaphor. But I grew up very much, I was the youngest of three, strong-willed. All of us were strong-willed. My parents were both strong-willed. We were modeled, opinionated, judgment, very strong, modeling in our family. And so I grew up just trying to be special. How I figured now with my adult brain, what I've done when I've looked back, and the patterns that started to emerge in my life, was that little Kimmy, felt like her dad left her, not that her dad left her mom, which is absolutely how little children, their brain capacity doesn't have any other way to process it, you guys. So whatever happens around them is not only happening to them, even though it really didn't happen to them necessarily, but it was a lot of times because of them. And I realize that now with my adult brain, my dad didn't leave my mom to little Kimmy. My dad left me. And so how all that kind of played out in my life was I needed to be special. Because the fear, and again, Brandon, this goes back to the kind of the premise of the book I'm just writing and the work I'm going to do is investigating now with our prefrontal cortex brain, the brain that doesn't really fully develop till like mid-20s, which is a scary thought because you go, wait, how much of my identity? Exactly. I decided long before my logical brain hit, who I was and what I was like, that I wasn't good enough. I wasn't worthy. I wasn't lovable. I wasn't acceptable. And so my whole identity is wrapped into proving that I am okay, that I am good, that I'm worthy, that I'm perfect, that I'm acceptable, that I can. And so I was driven. And so this is kind of the premise of this, is that for the good, bad, and the ugly, my identity was embedded, created, laid down, neural pathways, synapses, brain and thought and emotional wiring was laid down by a 4-year-old illogical, emotional child.
Right.
So I didn't really answer your question. So when I got to my late 20s, I really started to do some internal investigation. I noticed patterns. I joined a network marketing business back then, way in the what years were those? Late 70s. And that's a real personal development world if you have been involved with that. Yeah. Usually
we just actually partnered. We just started we just partnered the podcast with Purium, which is, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Purium or not, but it's network marketing, very like high integrity, high vibe. The founder lives in a converted, barn and cries talking about healing the planet with superfoods. So, I've always loved the model. It's a model that's been used inappropriately at times. And, as a result has gotten not always a great reputation. I've personally someone who, has been an entrepreneur my whole life and understands a fair amount about business. I've always loved the model. And when I found, what their aim was combined with, these high integrity products that are tested at the molecular level, all organic, it's like, oh, this is a perfect tie-in to podcast. So it's something that we've just done. So you're someone who's been in that world for a long time. And I've really enjoyed it so far. And there's so much learning and education that goes on too. It is. It's just like I've heard people say within the organization, I paid thousands and thousands of dollars for coaching and business courses and things like that. And I've learned so much more, being a part of Purium.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's for a person that wants to do it part-time. It fits the model. As I've expanded my reach in the world now with dealing with more, but basically it's just when you are when your abilities or your work determines your income, which is in any commission sales, you know that the work to do is inside between your ears. It's not trying to get somebody to do something. It's how to show up in a way where people want to do stuff with you because you're so you awaken something in them, right? So but that takes a lot of self-work. And that's what I did in the 70s, my late 20s. I started really like, oh my gosh, really? Not everybody thinks like I do? Not everybody agrees? What? And they can be right? And I can be right? What? That was a foreign thought for me. It's like, no, I'm right. You're wrong. I'm smart. You're dumb. But those were the monster tracks, which I'll talk about later. But that's when I really started to wake up to myself and what was possible and who was really driving this, who's really driving me? Who is this? Why do I act these ways? Why do I have to be special? Why do I show up in a room and draw attention to myself? Why do I need men or boys to like me and think I'm pretty and think I'm good and want me and all that? Right. When you start really uncovering those things, you discover some stuff if you're ready to see it, and it can be scary and uncomfortable. But that's how long this is. I've been in the trenches, and I keep getting bit by it, Brandon. Like, it's still not. I don't teach that it's ever over because it just gets more sophisticated. It learns what you learn. It goes to all the same seminars. It knows how to talk to you back in what you've already, what you already know. So it's tricky. It's a trickster.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. And what I always say is when you've gotten all the lessons you're meant to get from this life and you've learned all the things, you're still growing and learning if you're here. Because I believe we check out once we've gotten what we can from the experience in this life.
Yep. Absolutely.
Well, let's chat a little bit if you're ready. I'd love to just dive in because I know there's a lot of information there, in your forthcoming book, which comes out in October as we're recording this. And people may be listening to this years from now, but it's September 2018. Your book comes out in October 2018, and it's The Monster Under the Bed. And I think that's a fascinating topic. I think fear is something that I know in my own personal life, it's one of the biggest things I've had to overcome for my own growth. And your subtitle is Uncovering the Lie That Drives Us. And so I'd love to just dig into that. And so we can get as much, obviously we're never going to get as much as, cover as much information as you do, in the book that's laid out and everything like that. But I think if we can dive into some of those monster tracks as you referred to, I'd love to hear your thoughts on all this.
Okay. Well, let me just start with a question to you. And, I don't know what you're going to say, and it's fine, whatever it is. But when you were young, do you remember feeling like there was either something under your bed, in the closet, out the window, behind the tree? Do you remember having a fear?
I was a very scared child. I remember, I can relate it back to the movie, Poltergeist. I saw this movie as a little kid, and it just wrecked me. It was the scariest thing. And so I was very scared of the dark, very scared of, something lurking. And it took a long time for me to get over. For me, with my own son, I was pretty unconventional, out of the box, super open-minded, individual. The one thing I was really strict with was not letting him watch scary movies because of what they sort of did to me. And I don't know what my experience, how different it would have been had I not seen that. I mean, that's just one that I can relate back to that really got me, I was so sensitive, and you're seeing all this crazy supernatural stuff that's just horrifying. And it just, so I was a very scaredy cat little kid. Absolutely.
Well, and the interesting thing is that I've watched this now I wasn't as cognizant of this principle when I was raising. I have 4 kids, 4 boys. They're all adults. I have grandchildren now. So I've been watching it more in my grandchildren's life. Like, one grandchild I have, Eve, and when she was, she spent a lot of time at my house. When she was a baby, she slept fine in the dark, in a crib, in the dark. Like, it was no problem. Babies are born in the dark. They live in the dark in the womb. Dark is not a thing. But it's interesting to start noticing when the dark becomes a problem. And I remember thinking with Eve, I'm like, why all of a sudden, 2-ish, like somewhere around there, if I can think back, I go, why did it 2-ish? She's like, when you turn the light out, right?
Right.
What happened to her in the dark?
Right.
Nothing. She's never been abused. Nothing happened to her in the dark, but something triggered fear. So this is, again, my metaphor in the book and what I kind of base my whole premise on. And it's not it is, you don't have to agree or disagree. Just listen from a place of, it's a metaphor. But fear is an important survival part of our brain we came packaged with, that at certain points of cognition, when cognition starts to develop in a kid, in a baby, that fear is important for survival. We came prepackaged. We don't have language for it when we're little. We don't have a word. We don't have nothing. It just something feels wrong. And what that feeling comes from is, in the evolutionary process, the unknown was basically unsurvivable. That's how emotionally it's connected. And you can see that play out still today. It's wired in us that the unknown, and it doesn't make sense in a lot of ways now, because we do have our logical brain that's fully developed, and we go, why am I afraid of that? Like, that's dumb. Yeah.
Right.
But let's just go investigate that feeling, because that feeling came from wiring that we were born with. And that here's the biggest thing, has been embedded and cemented and fired and wired together all through our life. We think it's true. And so we don't question it because it's familiar. It's maybe like, I'm going to just rat out my husband here for a second, but he hates to speak in public. He hates it. And it's a very common fear people have. Like, I'm fine talking to you, but if you put me up in front of any kind of group of people to say something or do something, oh my gosh, no, I'm going to throw up. He's done that. He's had diarrhea and throwing up for days prior to knowing he had to speak about something, even as much as just giving his name and anything like that. So where does that come from? It's from these experiences that came out of this fear brain that the child was born with. So I'm coming up for air, Brandon. Do you have any other questions about that before I go to my next premise?
No, it's so true. That's one, I'm someone who is not scared to speak. That's for sure. I have plenty of words and thoughts and ideas. Right. And even for me, getting up in front of, a group, you get those butterflies. You get that, it's like, and when you think about it logically, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It's the same thing. It's like whether one person's listening or 1,000, it doesn't, why does it change anything? And I don't really find any sort of, and then you can take this podcast, for example, tens of thousands of people will ultimately hear what I'm saying right now. And it's not really scary or fearful for me because I'm the only one. There's no one looking me in the eye right now, right?
I was just going to ask you, are you the same behind the mic as you are? Like if there was 1,000 people in a room, would you be as comfortable, honestly?
I don't think I would. And I think with more exposure to doing it, I would get more and more comfortable. Yeah. And I've certainly spoken in front of a group many times, but, and I sort of get those butterflies and things like that. But I can't imagine, someone like myself who gets those, much less someone who's not predispositioned to kind of do this sort of work. It's like, and it seems like it's across the board that people are really fearful of this particular thing. And, I don't quite know. It doesn't make sense logically when you think about it, but maybe you have some more insight into that.
Well, because here's the premise, really the whole point of the work in the book that I'm doing is having people just build an awareness of where, like, I can't tell you, maybe I can count on one hand, and they were probably lying, the amount of people I've worked with who don't feel like there's something inside them that says they're not good enough. They're not worthy. Right. They're not perfect. They're not acceptable. Well, so my assertion about that is we're primates. And I don't think we realize what that really meant to us as children, because in fact, most people probably don't even realize they're a primate. I didn't. Right. It's like, well, what's a primate?
Right.
Unlike a giraffe or a deer or an elephant or a horse, right? I have deer outside my house here in, I have a house in Southern Oregon, that's where I'm at today. And our house is just surrounded by deer. Well, June-ish, you're going to see a lot of babies born around, and they're so cute and blah, blah, blah. They get up and walk immediately, that pretty much. And, you see animals that are born, they can get up and walk and stand. They can nurse for a little bit with their mom, but they're pretty self-sufficient early on. That is not us.
Yep.
So
we're very dependent.
We're very dependent, and we come wired with, in fact, in the book, I talk about a study that was done in the University of Oregon about monkeys that had a surrogate mom made of, both of them were moms. One was made of plushy, comfy, material. One was like a barbed wire material, but that's where their food came from. The food came from the barbed wired mom, and the plushy mom didn't have the food, but it was more comfy and lovey feeling, right?
Right.
And when that little monkey got scared, guess which one? It went to the comfy. It didn't care. Food was important. Absolutely. It would probably go over there and endure the pain of the barbed wires to get the food. But we need love. We need acceptance. We need to be okay in our community. And we still don't know. Most people still don't know that that's how their little self came into the world. So we had the question running in the background of our psyche. It was not in our minds. We didn't have language. We didn't have understanding logically, but it was, am I okay? Am I okay? Am I okay? Because that was the number one. We have to be okay. We have to be fit in these people because they have to take care of us. And so, again, using our logical brain to understand this illogical part of us that we came packaged with. Some people might be listening to this going, interesting. I get a lot of that. Like, interesting. I go, I know. You have to kind of live with it just for a little bit and see how it plays out because it fits so another facet of being primates is, and being born with the survival brain, and the question always running from that survival brain is what's happening around you, and it's about you. It's all about you. In fact, if it wasn't about us, like everything that happened is about us. If it wasn't, then we could die. Like it would set us up for not being cautious, right? We had to be cautious and fearful. The little Pollyannas meditating out on the hillside got eaten. They didn't live in the survival scheme. They did not have the ability. They had to get this fearful, cautious, what about that? What about that?
Yep.
Oh, what did they mean about that? What does that mean about me? What is that? Haven't you seen that, Brandon, played out in people or even in yourself right now? Everything's about us.
Yeah. And
right?
and it makes sense because, you are living in this world, and you're the center of your own sort of private universe in a sense. It's like everything is coming through you and you have no other frame of reference. So it just makes sense that you ultimately would kind of develop this way of approaching, interacting with reality. It makes
sense until it doesn't.
Yeah.
Okay, that's how I say that. Like it makes sense because now I see it play out because the wiring was laid by the little, kind of insane child that didn't have the full brain to deal with. And so now it doesn't, sure, it's all, and it's a dichotomy because I always teach in one of my monster tracks, I'll say, only do what you want to do because it is all about us. I get that until it becomes they said that because, and then we give meaning to other people's actions and behaviors that aren't really there. But because we haven't looked at that with our logical brain now, we just assume everything is about, they meant that about us. Like how many times have you been offended by something and then in investigating it, you go, oh, you mean you didn't really mean that?
Right. How many times are you misinterpreting what's happening? Yes. It's like so often.
Yeah. Because we give the meaning to everything. Nothing has inherent meaning, by the way. And that's a very bold statement, but the meaning everything has, we give it. And if we're coming from this illogical, emotionally laden brain that decided what everything meant, because when we were young, we needed to have that happen. So, another thing is it happens because of me. Just like how I talked about my when I was 4, my dad left my mom. Well, that's my adult brain telling you that because my dad didn't want to be married to my mom anymore. Emotionally, that isn't how I processed it. Emotionally, it was he left because I wasn't good enough. I wasn't special enough. If I was better, he wouldn't have left. And if I'd been better, my mom wouldn't have been in so much pain, because I'd lived with my mom during those years when I saw her cry and I saw her anguish about it. Because my dad left my mom for another woman. They got married the day of the divorce. So not only did my dad leave me, he left me for another woman. Oh, holy cow.
Right.
And that came back to bite me many times in my life until, I kind of had it figured out that that's how the wiring was laid. So, it's because of us things happen. And you see that play out, Brandon, in little kids, and I see it played out with women with abuse. They sit there and go, well, if I just didn't, women that are maybe dealing with a domestic violence issue, they're going, well, I just need to, I need to not make him mad. Like it's about because of me, he's that way, Or
right.
Like a rape victim. Well, it's because of something I wore. See, it's that. And here's what the thing I just want to go about and just make sure people understand, and we'll get into monster tracks, because monster track number 3 is judgment. We judge ourselves so harshly, and we further the damage. We deepen the wound. We just drive that knife in about whatever happened. It was because of us. And if, see, and I'm bad and I'm not good enough and I'm not, see, I got raped. Yep. See, it proves something. Well, no, it doesn't. You just have it wired that way. And now we can look at it with your logical brain that's so powerful, and we're not using it. We're all hijacked by our 4-year-old brain emotionally. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And it's like, it becomes a self-affirmation.
Yes.
So it's like you said, it's sort of a dichotomy, because it becomes, you're co-creating it in some way by your belief that, I'm not good enough and I deserve these things. So it's like, it becomes both in a sense, like it's these domino effects in a direction you don't want to go.
Yeah, your logical brain is saying, I hate this. This is not right. There's something wrong and toxic and dysfunctional about this. But you have a big sign on yourself that's really the decider about what's going to happen to you, is this emotional big sign on you that says, hurt me, hurt me, hurt me. I'm bad. I'm not good. I can't. Right? Like, so, and guess what's one's going to win? If we all did what we knew from our logical brain, we'd all be perfect. Like, we know enough to be perfect in our cerebrally. We know everything. There's nothing left really for you to know. Well, maybe other than what I'm telling you right now. But anyway, there's
the last thing.
Yeah, this is it. This is the only thing you need now. But if you can go investigate, that's why bringing awareness to this, the biggest point of what the work I'm doing is to bring awareness. But guess what happens, Brandon? When people become aware, guess where they immediately go? They go to judgment. Like they'll go, oh yeah, I can't. In fact, I had somebody tell me, you're wearing me to death. I'm wearing myself to death because
I'm wearing myself out.
I'm wearing myself out. Yeah. I'm wearing myself. And once it's like cleaning out a closet, right? It gets worse before it gets better. You got to clear all of that crap out and then look at it and go. And sometimes it's just thinking about that makes you go, no, we're just going to go clean our toilet and leave that closet alone, because that's going to be more fun. And I don't want to deal with what's in there, right? A lot of times, that's why I'm saying, if people aren't ready, it's no judgment. It's just when you're ready, you'll know it, you'll be ready. And I find that the pain of you've heard it say, it's a cliche, when the pain of change is less than the pain of staying the same, people will be ready, because pain is a motivator. We will we'll do something just to get out of pain. But the point of the awareness piece of it is looking at, and I talk about this a lot in the book and the stuff I'm doing, is like, just look at it like an observer and not you've aligned with the thought when you feel, when your emotions tell you. So it can go both ways. I can feel really, really, really good about something, and I'll go, oh yeah, that's why. Cause cause I'm a rock star today. I feel really good. I did that. And the other way is true too. It's like when you feel crappy, when you feel depressed or anxious or scared or insecure, follow it to the thought, because the thought always precedes that emotion, but we don't notice the thought until we feel the emotion. So And then most people just align with that feeling and they'll go, yeah, see. Instead of going observer of the thought, you notice the emotion and you go, oh, let me see, where did that feeling come from? What did I think about? Oh, I remember. Yeah, I have the thought that I suck. Okay, that's interesting that I think I suck in that. Let me investigate that. Do I suck really at that? Or is that just something I've always believed? It's just investigating it and awareness without judgment.
Sure.
So, there's another piece though that's really vital for you to understand in your brain development. And some of it is instinctual, like I've talked about. Some of it is conditioned. And this part is your reticular activating system. And, again, most people don't really know. And there's many functions. I have to say this because I talked to a person that's really an official neuroscientist, and he said, well, the reticular activating system plays many roles. You're just talking about one. And I said, okay, then I'll make sure I clarify that. And it's a gatekeeper for what gets let into our conscious awareness. It's the gatekeeper.
Right.
It's the thing that, we have tons of things happening in our world, in our bodies, in our environment. Like my air conditioner might have just kicked on. There's a little gnat flying over there by the window. There's, a truck outside going by, the garbage truck. Like there's so much stimulus happening in our world that now its job is to only let in the stimulus that fits either instinctually what we have been programmed, like we need to know where food is. It's going to let in that because we got to eat. And it's also the thing that makes you aware of someone that, ooh, I like you. I got a little vibe going on, like a little sexual thing going on because we got to procreate, that's instinctual. But there's also conditioned. And that's what that's what I address more is how we condition. I call it the mental bloodhounds. How we condition it is we give it a scent by our emotional response to something. And the significance emotionally we give to something will send it on its way. It doesn't argue with us. It doesn't say, like little 3 or 4 year old Kimmy, when I said, oh no, I'm bad. And it might have happened even before that. Like that's just what I tie back to now. My work, I don't go back like therapy or hypnosis or whatever to try to decide when exactly, if it was a one-time thing or if it happened over time. That doesn't seem as important to me as just like acknowledging that it's there. And now what do we do about it? I move into the now what phase more than the go back thing. Right. But whatever age it was, let's just use this divorce as an example. If that's when it happened for me, I gave emotional significance to who I am, to my mental bloodhounds. If I'm only average, I need to be special. Like that configuration is different in every person. Like not everyone's going to go average. They'll go stupid. Now that's a huge one. And that's a lot of reasons people don't want to get up in front of people, by the way, because they don't want to appear stupid, or they don't even want to talk because they appear stupid. Right. So if you're that person, go back and go, wait, how did I configure it? Was it stupid? Was I stupid? And now I'm working really, 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 really hard to hide it. Number one, in shame, or prove that I'm not, which some people that have lots of degrees after their names, I kind of go, I'm a little suspicious because not that there's anything wrong with it, but it's like, where did that need to come from? And it doesn't necessarily mean anything. So I don't give meaning to it externally. It's a self-directed question and a self-directed answer. It's all, everybody has to process it themselves. But the minute I gave my bloodhounds the emotional message that I'm not good enough, it has been really faithful. It's good. It's done its job. It just keeps showing me evidence.
Confirming.
Yes.
Yeah. It's kind of like, seeing the car, a particular car that you want to buy or whatever. And then once you have sort of zeroed in on that, now you get served up that car. Like, whoa, hold on. Did everyone just go buy these, or am I just noticing?
Yep. Exactly. And, or time, like mine was another example of mine was like certain times on a clock. 11/11 is my anniversary. So, man, I just
and that's
thought
a big one in the spiritual community. People tune into that.
I know, and I don't want to take away any of the beliefs or interpretations of that, but it could be that, because I know for me, now that I've given myself another interpretation or now that I've been studying the reticular activating system, now I pay attention to when I look at a clock and it isn't that time. But before, I only noticed 11:11 or 12:34, like 1, 2, 3, 4, because I thought that was kind of interesting. And that's amazing. Oh, isn't that interesting how it's always 11:11 or it's always 12:34? Well, the bloodhounds are not letting in the other times you look at the clock because you haven't told it any significance. So anyway, that's and I think that this lie that's under the bed, the lie and the monster are synonymous. So when I say the monster under the bed, uncovering the lie that drives us, I'm saying uncovering the monster, like going to run to the roar and look to see there's something under there that has been dictating everything in our life since we were little. And so we're uncovering that. But I think we would have, if it wasn't for the mental bloodhounds, if it wasn't for that facet of our brain, we would have probably cognitively, as we got older, kind of like how we decided maybe Santa isn't real. Sorry if you have kids listening and they think, sorry, edit that out. But, honestly, like we would have cognitively come to a new decision. And some people with age and time do rewire some of these inaccurate pathways using what I'm talking about. Their cognition, their prefrontal cortex brain going, yeah, that doesn't make sense. Why do I do that? Okay, I'm done taking the blame. I'm done with that. And they can just seriously make a new decision. And based on how emotional that new decision is and how strongly they feel, they can actually unwire, rewire, and let that go. And I think age has a way of doing that because pain, as we get older, we've experienced so much pain in so many different areas of our life, our work, our relationships, our bodies, our health, our finances. Life has a way, right, of smacking you upside the head.
It sure does.
Anyway.
All right. Well, now seems like a good moment to take a quick minute to tell those of you who aren't familiar a bit about our sponsor, Gaia. I've been a big fan of Gaia for many years now, which is why they're the only content provider I've ever reached out to in regards to potentially supporting this podcast. So needless to say, I'm very excited they're now supporting the show. Gaia truly is my personal go-to source for streaming consciousness content on the web. They have an incredible 7,000 plus exclusive videos covering 5,000 years of wisdom. Just to give you an example, on the show Missing Links, the incredible researcher Greg Braden explores all the biggest questions concerning who we are, where we come from, where we're going, by connecting the missing links between science and spirituality to complete our understanding of humanity's history and to better understand the interconnectedness of all things. Awesome, right? And that's just one example. As you guys constantly hear me say, it's a daily conscious effort to maintain an elevated vibration. And if you're looking to go deep down the rabbit hole to do so, then Gaia is the best place I know of to do it, period. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out. Well, could you, this is all fascinating. I'd love to get like a little more granular on these tracks, the monster tracks. I know there's 10 of them. And I know, of course, in the book, you'll go into great detail, but if you could give us like a high level overview of these 10 tracks so that people can start to at least have an awareness of them and maybe identify them.
Okay, great. So, about half the book is about the 10 monster tracks. And honestly, there's more than 10. It's just 10 the first 10 I identified for the book. And I'm going to give you a little teaser right here because I'm going to have the latest, two newest, recently discovered monster tracks that aren't anywhere. You can get it at my website. So it's a little teaser, but,
cool.
When everything's out right now, at the time that this is put out, I don't even think my website's fully up yet. I had a little train wreck with the website a few months ago, but by the time, if you go there and sign up, then you can find out about the 2 more months. And I think I'll just keep discovering more
adding.
Because I don't think I think it's an inexhaustible list, but the 10 that I have that I've identified are biggies. In fact, I did a survey on Facebook the other day where I did a Google questionnaire kind of thing. And I said, anonymously, and I asked some questions. and they related to my tracks. And so I got lots of confirmation that these are areas where people struggle. Number one is shame. And you talked about it. And shame is kind of the epicenter. It is that message, that very, very first feeling we had at either 2 or at 4, whatever age, I don't care. But it's that feeling of I'm not okay. That's shame. And I think that actually sparks that survival brain of then either run away, the flight message, or the prove that, because you can't not be okay. I mean, that's the primate in us. We can't not be okay. So the brain, the amygdala is going to say, you could die. It doesn't understand logically anything. It only, and this is the truth to this day, you guys, to this day, your amygdala, your survival fight and flight brain does not have a connection to logic. If you weigh 300 pounds and have diabetes, it feels pain and shame and like I'm not okay. One of the conditioned responses is, and to make you feel better, like it doesn't know that you're not dying of starvation. Your survival brain only cares that you live, and it doesn't know that your diabetes is is threatening that. It doesn't have that because it only senses your emotion. So this is really a huge piece, and I've just touched on it lightly in the book, but I'm going into it in way more detail in other programs and coaching and things I'm doing, because wow, emotionally that is who's driving the train, right? Is our emotions, because it's connected to that deepest, most powerful part of our brain is survival. And you're not going to overcome that one easily, because it's really how we've evolved and lasted as a species. So sorry, I digress. Shame.
Yeah. And you real quick before you move on to the next one, and you gave a great example when I was checking out your conversation with Matt, and you were talking about, the little kid hiding why they're pooping in their diaper,
I didn't know if you wanted me to talk about that story. It's such a great story.
We're not scared of baby diapers on this show. And it's like, I think it's one that we can all relate to. We've seen, experienced, maybe remember ourselves that, instantly creating shame, like this is bad, this is wrong, I need to go hide behind the plant, Did
your child do that, Brandon?
There's definitely some of that at some point, for sure.
Yeah, at some point, because, and again, this is not even in the book either. This is like new material since I discovered it while I was chatting with a person on the plane, and she was asking about the book, blah, blah, blah. We had a 5-hour flight. We had a lot of time. We're okay. So we talked about shame, and I said, and where, I don't remember who said what when, but the story came out of, what do we do when we change a poopy diaper? In fact, if you've got a baby right now, pay attention to this, because it's innocent, which is all, 99.9% of the harm done to us was done either innocently or someone's monsters raising us, which is really what it is. We're raised by our parents' monsters, and we raise our kids with our monsters. It's just the monster is still there. We have to make sure we have good kids. Why? Because it looks bad if we don't on us, right? It's all about us. Right. Anyway, but when you're changing the poopy diaper, as little, like newborn babies, Brandon, have cortisol levels rise. Newborn babies, they've tested and measured their hormones. The cortisol levels can rise if there's fighting and anger and negative energy around them in that moment. Their levels can rise. That's how their survival brain is on full alert. They're sleeping there. And they're sleeping and their cortisol levels rise. That's how we don't know how we were wired until we understand this emotional survival part of us. And so the little kid that you're changing the diapers and going, ooh, stinky. Now, I didn't mean anything by it, right? But there was something odd to that little baby about what happens when this behavior happens and this thing she's doing to me. Something's weird about that. So when they're now 2 running around the house in a diaper, I used to wonder, why do my kids go hide in corners under tables in the closet, and they come out all red-eyed like they've been grunting. And I'm like, oh, I know where you've been, behind the couch, pooping. Right. What? Right? Like, where did that come from? And this lady and I just made this connection. Like, yeah, that's probably it. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but it fits the story very, very, very accurately.
Definitely.
And so But shame to this day, you can tell it's a flight message. It's like hide and make sure nobody knows that you're not good enough. And so that's part of our identity as well, because we run away, maybe risk averse. We have another word that's out, a buzzword right now that's out is called imposter syndrome. Do you know this?
No, I haven't heard this.
Have you heard that? Yeah, it's like several people, and it's again, my reticular activating system is on alert for that word because it's new to me, and I go, "What? What's that?" And I want it, and I can directly tie it to flight, like because you don't feel like you are, like you feel fake, right? Like, I'm not really as good as people think I am.
Yeah, I do hear this. I haven't heard it referred to it as imposter syndrome, but that concept is one that seems to be bubbling up a lot, where people, even people that have created a lot of success for themselves, it's like, oh no, people are going to know that I'm really not as good as they think I am.
Yep, exactly. So that's shame, and that's the mother. I think it's the epicenter of all the other tracks. I think that is that first feeling that triggered the survival amygdala. Then 2 is people pleasing, which is also right in there, because what happens is because of our primate wiring, we have to please these people. We have to make them happy with us. So we get into habits of behavior and thought, mostly behavior, based on the fear that we're not okay. So I better be okay. So in my family, I looked around. I mean, I didn't look around logically, right? This is not done logically. This is done with, if you have to survive, what do these people value? These people valued, in my world, music. And so I was taking piano lessons. I was singing in church. I was on the stage. I don't remember ever being afraid to speak or sing in front of people. I mean, like to your point, I might have little butterflies. You know what I mean? That's different than like, I'm going to go throw up over there because I can't do it kind of feeling.
Right.
In fact, at this point, I'm like, bring it, because I love where I go now when I'm in front of people. I'm channeling something when I speak. I love it now, but that's because I've got that wiring down based on it served me well. There isn't don't look at these tracks as all good or all bad. There's the good, bad, and the ugly about it, but it's the energy source it comes from. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. So people pleasing, when is there anything wrong with making people happy? Absolutely not. I love it. It makes me feel really good to make someone happy. It's when it becomes dysfunctional and monster driven is when you have to make people happy. It's a compulsion. It's like you have to, and you're 45 and you're still worried that your mom's going to be upset with you. That's a problem, and maybe your wife's looking at you going, hello, why are you still like, that's not okay here. That's not okay. Right. And so that's where you can kind of point to it. And people pleasers know they're the ones that don't like conflict of any kind. So they're in a no-win because they're never going to make everybody happy. And they're also worried about everyone liking them. They're worried about saying no to people in general. They have a hard time saying no because they're worried about people liking them. And that's a deep, deep inherent. That's nothing to beat yourself up about, though. Please don't hear that as judgment, which is track number 3. These are just things to be aware of. Track number 3 is judgment in all forms. And I believe that people that are the most judgmental outwardly are just reflecting how judgmental they are to themselves. They beat themselves up all the time.
Makes sense.
Again, with this chatter, the monster's voice, I call it chatter. Other people use the word chatter in their brain too, but it's just like, that's how it shows up, and it keeps driving it deeper, because the patterns of thought, the muscle memory of thought have been laid down. People don't realize their thoughts are just patterns of habit of thought, or habit of thinking the same thing over and over creates that thought to come back over and over and over. You can actually stop that cycle, but that's another topic. But judgment is big because not only do we judge ourselves, but I look at it like looking at things as right, wrong, good, bad. I agree, disagree. There's a lot of external, all these monster tracks are really external things that we can look at in our behavior, responses, and reactions, to show us how it's all tied back down to this monster or the lie that we're not okay. So, and the survival brain. So these are outward things that are easier sometimes for people to identify with, to help them discover, to kind of follow that trail. So if you're a very right, wrong person, black, white, good, bad, agree, disagree, you live in that mindset, this is something to look at. It doesn't serve you, honestly, overall. There's some parts to it that serve you, but it's just not, that's not how life is. And you're going to get trapped in that thinking. Number 4 is huge. It's comparison. Comparison in my little survey, that's most people live with their radar going constantly of, okay, how am I compared to them? Because that's right. It's a way that the lie keeps get further embedded, because especially social media, Brandon,
Right.
we look at all these people and we go, oh my gosh, they're so much better. They can lose weight. I've been in health and weight loss for 11 years now. That's my network marketing business now, currently, that I'm not actively, I'm really kind of, it's nice because of the leveraged income part of that model, right?
Right.
I have a great team. I've learned a lot of these principles in the trenches, especially in this last business I've been with. And, so I kind of left the team to say, go, you guys go on. I'm going to go do this book thing for a little bit and impact a bigger piece of the world with my messages. And so, but I've been in health and weight loss for that many years. So I've seen the monster play out with comparing my body to yours, all the images on the magazine racks, all the people in the gym, right? It's just like,
right.
It's horrible. You can get
that's a
totally
huge one.
Yourself.
It's a huge one.
Mm-hmm.
And it really makes no sense when you understand that you are truly a unique emanation in every sense of the word. So it makes no sense. It's always like comparing apples and oranges. You are your own unique individual. And when you're trying to compare, especially against, social media stuff, which oftentimes is just someone else's well-painted picture of their life, with a lot of help from Photoshop and, choice cuts, highlight reels. And then you're thinking, wow, their life is magical all the time. And look at me. And it's like, it's all based off of lies.
Yeah. Because who decided, and this is a huge issue, body shaming in our culture, I think in the world, who decided, in fact, if you go back and look, we were in France a couple years ago and looked at these pictures of women, aristocracy back in the 1700s, they were plump. Those women were beautiful.
They were not model
plump.
skinny like we have decided is beautiful in recent years.
And, just to speak to that too, because this, again, has a little special place in my heart with health and weight loss and women's minds and shame and all that. It's that, honestly, if you own, and this is one of the biggest messages I can give about this subject, if you love you can't get to happiness through a hate or fear or shame. You're never going to find that place because all it's going to do is drive you deeper into the lie deeper that you're not okay as you are.
Right.
As you are right now, you are perfect and intrinsically valuable and loved and unconditional. So if you look at the little cellulite on your legs or the dimples in your butt or the saggy boobs and you go, you know what? And I've worked through so many women trying to shift into women, especially, but it is men too. There's men that have this.
For sure.
But if you just can look at, honestly, come to a new interpretation, it's a rewiring process. But you go, thank you, body. Holy smokes. My body is flippin' amazing. My body's been with me my entire life. It's my best friend. It loves me more than anything. And if you're a mom that's had, if you're a mom, you've had kids, it's helped me co-create life. Like I am.
Right.
So here's if you can shift your interpretation about you, people will start shifting. People believe what you believe about you. Like you give off this energy about, like my husband, I was 50 pounds overweight. I mean, he loved me because I didn't do the dieting thing because I hated my body. I did the dieting thing, or I did this health program I started because I wanted to feel better. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just internally feel better. But it wasn't because I worried that someone wasn't going to like me or I didn't look good in a bathing suit or, I was not feeling accepted by people. But that's a driving force. So we just keep dieting and putting back weight, putting on weight. Because honestly, you're never going to get to where you want to go with happiness and fulfillment and joy and peace using these monster-driven behaviors to get there.
Right.
So you can't, one of the phrases I say in the book, which just resonates everywhere for me, is you can never get enough of what you never needed to begin with.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah, it's so true because we're ever craving and never satisfied. So you can never make enough money. You can never be skinny or pretty enough. You can never be smart enough. right? Like you can never be perfect enough. How many of you perfectionists, which by the way is the next monster track, perfectionism, how many perfectionists are ever satisfied? I've never met one. Like unless they've started to rewire this, right? Unless they've started already this process, because there's always something that could be better.
Always.
They could have folded the towel a little bit different, put it a little bit. But anyway, if you're a perfectionist and you struggle with it, it's nothing wrong with doing things perfectly either. No, don't hear this as right, wrong. This is if you are being driven by monster energy to have everything perfect. You've already seen the damage in your wake. You've already damaged probably your health because you're so anxiety ridden about it, about how your house looks if people come over, about your body, about your image, the car you drive, your children's behavior. These are all things that perfectionists have a really hard time, and they see the damage show up, right? And if they're trying to get their kid to clean a toilet a certain way, and that kid's like, oh my gosh, get me out of here. And they hate you because now come here, honey. Now, is there anything wrong with teaching to be really, really the best you can? No, but there's that fine line, right, Brandon? Like, the fine line. So, the next monster track is, and I don't really have them right in front of me, but I should, as we get down the list, because these are all like, the first two are the biggest, like those are the ones. And then the other ones just kind of show up and they're kind of a hierarchy too. Yeah. So another one is all or nothing. It's very much related to judgment. It means all of this is true or all of that is false. You see it politically played out right now. Like nobody, if you're labeling someone as they're right, and they're all right, or they're all wrong. And I created a hashtag called Black and White. It is. It's related back to judgment. But how it shows up, let me just stay in a minute with, I'm going to stay with political, then I'm going to go to health, how it shows up. Political, I started a hashtag a few months ago called hashtag and both, because there's so much polarization in the world right now with the political situation, especially in the United States. But I think it's everywhere. As I've traveled, everyone kind of has this battle in their countries going on about, globalism or nationalism or whatever, right? So in the United States, let's just say, I talked about, I had a discussion the other day with this woman and I was talking about, and both. And I go, because here's the thing. It's we're living in a civil war kind of era right now, in our country with divisions and families and polarity. And she goes, oh, I know, it's really scary. And then I stopped and went, okay, so what is really the scary part? Like when I said that, what did you think of? She goes, well, Donald Trump in the White House. And I go, okay. I said, okay, well, let me just go to another level above that specific. That's like ground level. That's like the issue. Let's go above the issue to how did a Donald Trump get in the White House? How are people feeling and thinking that caused that to happen? Oh, okay, maybe there was some Russia collusion. I don't know. I don't watch the news. So I'm just like telling you what maybe, but here's what will happen is people will latch on to that's why Donald Trump got in the White House. So therefore still all those people that support Donald Trump are wrong and stupid. And like I'm saying, let's move the whole conversation to a different one and say, tell me how you feel. Let me understand, because there is some truth to your friends that disagree with you. There is some truth that you might be missing because you're so busy in an all or nothing mindset in judgment. And we're going to continue to dig in deeper and deeper and deeper. Like I thought it would get better after the campaign. It's gotten worse since the actual election, right? So, and it doesn't matter to me what your stance is on it. And I don't want you to care what my stance is. My stance is this. It's hashtag and both. It's hashtag everybody is there's something important that people are trying to have people understand. And we're all missing the point of it. And we're polarizing and ruining and destroying families and relationships in the process. So in any conflict in your life, Stephen Covey talked about in 7 Habits, seek first to understand. And then to be understood. That's a huge principle here, because if people feel heard, And honestly, that's an opinion which doesn't have to be right or wrong, but a suspicion I have is the reason there is a Donald Trump in the White House is because there's a percentage of the population that hasn't felt heard. And this to them was a disruption of government that they wanted to have happen. Disruption's happening everywhere, right? Disruption is happening. And now I want to know what is it? What's the disruption you wanted to see? And are you happy? Like where can we all go together? Because I think we all could agree that disruption needed to happen to some degree, right? Political stuff is just kind of a mess to begin with. So anyway, that's the political world about hashtag and both and all or nothing. Let me talk about to the dieter, because that's again in my wheelhouse. The all or nothing. Brandon, have you ever gone on a diet and said, okay, I'm all in. I'm on.
I have.
Then you eat, and then you have a beer that night or something. You eat a cookie.
Yep.
What happens?
Spiral off the wagon, down to the depths.
Yep. Absolutely. So that is the danger with all or nothing thinking. I've seen it with addictions as well. I've seen it with business and money. Like, well, I've already blown it. I've already blown my budget. I've already I've already It's like the meme I saw on Facebook once where someone had their cell phone and they dropped it and they go, well, I dropped my cell phone, so now I'm going to grind it in the ground with my foot. It's like, well, since it's already dropped, I'm going to grind it. It's that kind of mentality. But so living in a not so rigid all or nothing place, because it will keep you trapped. Also, it keeps others trapped. We label people with, let's say, my husband's a slob. Oh my gosh, my husband is. I'm just making this up. Right. But because he's not, I'm really more of the slob. But let's just say I've labeled somebody, my teenage son. Oh my gosh, he's so lazy. Oh, so lazy. Well, number one, I've given my reticular activating, my mental bloodhounds, the message of the truth, right?
Yep.
And now one of two things is going to happen. I'm only going to see evidence of my teenage son being lazy. I'm only going to notice the time he lays around and just sits and does nothing. I'm not going to notice the time he might have taken out the garbage or picked up his dish or cleaned the kitchen or, I might not notice that. I probably won't, because that's how our brains are wired. The bloodhounds don't let that data in because I've already decided what's true. Yep. And the other thing that happens is the person you're dealing with feels that energy emanating from you. They feel the label you've given them, right?
Yep. And it then conditions them. And then it conditions them. I mean, I had a situation, at work recently where people thought this person was doing something dishonest and, he claims he wasn't. And then over time, that emerged and he's like, well, people kept saying it. And then it not that that's a good excuse, but he's like, okay, if everyone thinks that I'm this way, then I'll be this way. And it's such a fascinating thing when you tie in this very, this mental, observation about how our minds work with reticular activation. And then you tie that in also with, the more spiritual concepts of like law of attraction, and you marry the two up. It's like you realize how much, energy and where you're focused literally is creating for more of it for you.
I think the age, and your listeners are probably already into this teaching already, but the mainstream people aren't yet. And I have proven it so many times in my life, what I give energy to and emotion to. In fact, this is part of my rewiring process. Is what fires together, wires together, not just in your brain, but in consciousness. So when thought has power. Thought is just like 100 years ago. Don't get hung up on the time frame, but how long ago? It wasn't that long ago. People didn't understand electricity.
Yep.
They didn't understand that there was an energy, and they can't see it. But now now we can access it just by plugging in something. So I believe that's exactly. I think there's such power in our thought and emotion, and we create. It's faith. It's subconscious. I don't know what else to call it, but it's power. It's power. Yep. It's tangible power, and a force. Let's just call it a force. And you're using it right now in your life, one way or the other. There's no getting around it. And so when you look at your life, if you're not happy with what you see, that leads to monster track 10, which is blame. And I'm going to go back and hit 8 and 9, or maybe 7, 8, 9. I don't know really where I am, but let's go to blame real quick, because we tend to do in our life is when things don't go wrong, it's our brain again, the wiring, survival, right? There has to be a cause for every effect. So if you have a faulty marriage, if your finances are messed up, if your body's not healthy, it's so natural. The default programming is to find a reason why. Right. And the default reason will not be you. Because back to the little 3-year-old, it can't be you. You've got to be okay. So this is all part of the fight. The fight message from the amygdala is find a reason for everything that happens badly. Now, of course, you take all the credit for all the good stuff, but it's interesting because people, when they start taking responsibility, and to your point, our thought, our emotional, our operating system, when you start just owning that, now you're going to hear a lot of chatter when you start doing that, because your monster, the lie, that survival part of you is not going to want you to take responsibility. It's going to automatically, the grooves of those thoughts of it's my husband's fault, it's my kid's fault, it's my boss, it's my genes, it's my whatever. Watch and see how much you go to others for your plight. Other reasons, the others.
Huge.
And so when you just make a stand and say, you know what? I'm taking full 100%. I'm going to stand in my new truth that my life is a direct response of me. And whether it's because of something you caused or your reaction to it.
Yeah. It's so much more empowering.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
Much more empowering.
You don't have to be the victim anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, which actually I got to go back and talk about buttons. Buttons is a big monster track. You're getting your button pushed. Either comes in the form of like getting angry easily or getting offended easily, being like on radar to be offended right now. Brandon, there's so many people that are just a button waiting to be pushed.
Triggers.
In fact, they have their button is so big on them. Like you can hardly say, my kids are a little bit this way. They're so overly in tune with political correctness that if I say something absolutely I would never say anything horrible. Like I'm not a prejudiced person at all. I don't have any of that. None. But if I say something and they'll go, Mom, that's not okay. And I'm like, wait, well, okay, explain to me why. What did I say? You know what I mean? Like everybody is so on edge about everybody being completely we're in a reactionary mode right now where I think, again, it goes back to, I think people are tired of just having to be, and is there truth in the message that you should absolutely not be prejudiced and not be racist and not be all those things? Absolutely. And my book talks about, I'm not going to speak, I could write volumes, as there have been volumes of books about how wrong it is to be prejudiced, how wrong it is to be racist, how wrong it is to be sexist. But you know what? All of those isms and are fear-based. They're not hate-based. Hate comes from fear. Somebody is fearful about something first. And when you deal on the fear level and you go, wait, what am I afraid of? The button getting pushed, right? When I get angry easily, ooh, I'm afraid you've touched on something that I don't want you to know. It's me. I don't have to get my button pushed. If I lose the button, what would happen? They could even try to push the button all they wanted, and they don't. Abraham Lincoln, I think, who knows, there was a quote attributed to him that said, "He who angers me conquers me." Because it's really about, why do I have a button that's even there that you can push?
Right.
But because we blame, we point the other person and says, you made me mad. Well, how can someone make you mad? What if they couldn't make you mad?
No one can make you anything. Ultimately, you make yourself. Exactly.
Yes. And my assertion is that button is really covering the wound. You know, that little 4-year-old scared self that doesn't want somebody to know something. Like maybe I interpreted your behavior on that subverbal emotional level that you think I'm stupid. That's a huge button pusher right there. Oh, what do you mean? What do you mean? How do you do that? And I could hear business meetings where people just go, "Rawr," because they got their, and then your button pushes my button. And then what happens, what happens in the brain, Brandon, is when your amygdala is sparked, when you're in fight or flight mode, your prefrontal cortex, the reasoning logical brain, shuts down. You don't even have access to it. How many times have you been in a fight with someone, your wife, your friend, whatever? You said stuff you didn't really ever really mean. And you felt bad about because you did not have access to that brain. When you're in fight or flight, all of the blood, all of every part of your body goes to either you go hide, you can stand still too and freeze, or you can run away, or you can fight. And when you're in the moment of that button being pushed, you're fighting. Because you got attacked in your emotional level, you got attacked, and so you're coming back. That's how these things escalate. And anyway, do you find that interesting?
Fascinating. Yeah, and bringing the light of awareness to it all is like such a great step to changing it, rewiring the way you deal with these. And for me personally, what you just were talking about, these triggers, these buttons being pushed. I mean, I've been someone who so many times in my life, you push a button, it's just like, I am so wound up and so energized in a not good way, reactionary way. And it's been probably the biggest journey for me to not take the bait, so to speak, on these things, and really slowly but surely rewire those, neural pathways so that I'm able to keep all of my brain intact. That actually is going to help me to navigate the situation most effectively. And it's a work in progress.
And people say to me, Kim, but how do you do that? It's too hard. And I'm like, well, number one, is to your point, and what we've talked about is awareness. You're not going to catch it right away. Like, you're going to slip. It's just because that's the path, that's the groove you're in, is slipping. But now your prefrontal cortex brain is going to be aware. So I say, use those slippages as a red flag, or a little identifier that, when in retrospect. So this is what I suggest to do, is like, look at it afterwards and go, okay, so instead of being mad at the person that pushed the button, because maybe there was some very hurtful things, there's innocent attacks and then there's deliberate attacks, right? There are some people who their buttons pushed, and now we're just in the battle of the monsters. And maybe they even came at you with that, right? But there's a lot of times there's just innocent attacks that, again, because we're a button waiting to be pushed, we interpreted it as an attack that wasn't really there. But once we escalate, so you just look back and go, wait, what was that? What comment did they make to me? And then just go investigate that thought, go back down, follow it down, and go, oh, yeah, I'm afraid. I was afraid. They were inferring, or they knew that I am dumb, or I am not good enough, or I am irrelevant, or I am unworthy. I am just bad. Like, if you just track it back down, it's one of those. It's like going to be something that is going to be your foundational little phrase. I was in a boarding area gate for an air to fly out somewhere. And it was interesting because and that's why you're never done, because you're going to have the onion's going to get peeled on different levels, as you go, and you're going to start seeing things. But I love that I can see it, because before I was just on autopilot, right? So I was in the boarding gate and I heard the announcement come, and it was an airline where you had a specific seat. It wasn't like Southwest or some of these where you just get on, in a boarding group kind of thing, but you had an actual specific seat. So I have remembered over the years, looking back, when I had this trigger hit me in this boarding gate, I heard the announcement, okay, those of you in rows, blah, 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 line up, right? Oh my gosh, the throng of people head to the lineup. And I just, it's so funny, because I think I've had this resistance to this for years and I never identified it. I immediately felt resistance. I went, heck no, I'm not getting in that line. That plane's not leaving without me. Right.
Right.
But the intensity, and I always thought, I'm just going to be the last one on, because I don't want to go stand in that line. And why? That's stupid.
I've done the same thing.
Like I had, like it was the judgment thing. I'm smart. They're dumb. Blah, blah, blah. I have a seat. They're not going without me. Blah, blah, blah. Well, what I noticed that day is the energy behind that thought was pretty rebellious. It was like, and I was in the process of writing the book and I was paying attention. I was like, wait, where's this coming from? Okay, let me go investigate. And guess what I found? I found little Kimmy hiding under the bed, worried about being average. I don't want people to know that I'm just like everyone else.
Right.
Oh my gosh. So in that example, it's a run to the roar. So towards the end of my book, I talk about how to rewire. You got to be able to go lift up the bedspread and look. You got to be ready to do that, which I did as a kid. Probably you did too when you thought there was something somewhere. As you got older, you went, wait, let me go look. There's nothing there, right?
Yep.
So in this example of running to the roar, as soon as I identified it as the lie that was driving that emotion and that rebellion, I went, okay, I'm getting in that line. I'm going to go get in that line. Okay, that's where that, now, do I still kind of wait sometimes to get on the plane? Yeah. Cause mainly now I just don't want to fight. And it's not reasons. The same energy though. Right. Yeah. But I had to go run to that roar and be okay. Here's the point. I had to be okay with the lie that I was average until I could go be an average person. In my mind. Now, am I average? No, nobody is. But that was the lie I needed to face. This is the dichotomy here. Until you're ready to go do that thing that you would die to have to do, and you own it, that you're just average and you're a nobody. And this is really weird to hear because some people are going to go, what? You're going to own that? Yeah, because if I don't own that, then anything that comes instead of owning it is going to be a proving that I'm not. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Until I'm okay with that, and the word average was the lie that little Kimmy came up with. It's really not true, but I have to go look at that lie and love it. I have to love that lie.
What you resist persists, right? Yeah. What you resist persists, and what you accept, you move through. Yep.
That's hard because it goes against everything we've been taught. I look at some of these gurus about, success and setting goals. Now, is there anything wrong with goals? No, but I just think, oh my gosh, success comes from contentment and peace and happiness internally. You can never get there. Fantasy track number 9, monster track 9 is fantasy. You can't ever get enough stuff, get skinny enough. Like it's this fantasy. If that would happen, then I'll be okay. Then I'll feel good about myself. It's not good. You're not going to get there from there. Yeah.
Absolutely. Wow. Well, those are fascinating. Did we cover all of them?
Yeah, compulsion. Compulsion is just the feeling of having to do something a certain way. And it's on one end of the scale, it's compulsion. On the far end of the scale, it's addiction. And, but all compulsion's not addiction, but addiction is compulsion. Like I'm driven to do something I don't really want to do, but I can't stop it. But I've had people bite their nails, talk about biting their nails. They can't stop it. Or, washing their hands till they bleed. Like there's a lot of compulsions that or folding your towel. It's kind of related to perfection in a way. Like I have to do something a certain way in order to be happy. And so that I think the only one is, that's the only other one, but there's two bonus ones that I've discovered. I'm not going to reveal it here because it's my little teaser, but, no, I love watching people respond. Like I've done some live events, which I have a live event actually coming up in November 4th in Vegas. So if you hear this and you're want to come to this Vegas live event, the details will be on my website as well. But
what is your website? Maybe you can throw that out while you're saying it.
Okay. It's Kim Fiske, and Fiske has an E on it, but I think I bought the other domain name because a lot of people don't put the E on it. Yeah. So it's Kim, KIMFISKE.com. And honestly, when this comes out tomorrow, it actually might be fully up. It's still a landing page for the book just to be notified when the book comes out. So right now you can just get in my world by giving me your email address and you're not going to get anything for it. I don't have even an opt-in right now for you. And I don't even have a cool little gift for your listeners.
You've just given a wonderful gift already. So if they've listened to this, they've gotten a lot out of it, I'm sure.
And I hope so.
Absolutely. This has been, I can't believe how quickly the time went. We're getting down to it here, but I would like to, take it a little different direction before we wind down. And that is, I love hearing stories, a good story of synchronicity or serendipity, or even a positive paranormal story. If you have something like that up your sleeve, a little story time is always welcome.
Okay. No, and it leads me, it actually fits very well because at the end of the book, I end the book with this story, and I call it my love epiphany. I told you I was raised in church. I was raised cerebrally knowing that I was loved. God loved me. Mm-hmm. And I knew that cerebrally, logically all my life. And did I have some, times where maybe I felt something internally? Absolutely. But here's what happened. I had just discovered meditation, which in the Christian world, there's some Christian circles, especially however long ago this was, 7 years ago, I think, that there's a lot of Christian people that get hung up on the word meditation because it sounds too new age or whatever, and they get snagged by the word right, wrong, blah, blah, blah. So I was calling it quiet time, and we were having some difficulty with one of our kids and some depression issues they were struggling with, and I was lost. Like, I did not know how to handle any of the stuff that was going on, and I had just learned about quiet time, quieting my mind, and finding this quiet, peaceful place. And also change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. So I was actually doing this kind of thing, what I talked about earlier, the power of thought. This is probably the first example of when I was in quiet time with picturing my son. And I did not go into this quiet time fear-based, like, oh God, help him, kind of feeling. Right. I went in, no, how do I want him to feel? How do I want him? What's the energy I want to send to him? I want him to feel unconditionally loved and radiantly happy. So in my mind's eye, and that kind of just came through this process of quieting, these thoughts and ideas came to me, which I believe are coming from source, coming from whatever you want to call it, the universe, source, God. Yep. It doesn't matter to me. I don't think that source cares what you call it either.
Right. It's been called a lot of things, I'm sure.
Yeah. It's like, and so as I quieted, I could hear it. And then I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to picture him this way. So in my mind's eye, I just pictured him in his face, in my mind, feeling, and then I created the feeling I wanted him to feel, like unconditionally loved and radiantly happy. Those were the words that just kept resonating in my mind as I pictured him. And emotionally, it was almost like by proxy, I wanted to have that experience so he could have it. Does that make sense? Like I was keeping myself in that place with his picture, his face, and his visual of his arm. And this was just me. I had his arms up in the air, his face aimed towards the sun, to the light. And in my emotion, I felt this, and I was sending him this. Mm-hmm. Well, number one, not only did that lead to a huge, that process right there. And I talk about it in my rewiring part of the book a little bit. I touch on it, but there's so much here that needs to happen, but to explain. But the cool thing was he was in high school at the time, and he was in choir. Of course, he's in choir because he was raised in my family, right? Right. He had to do that to be, back in the theory otherwise, I talked about. It was
so that or live in the doghouse, right?
Exactly. I didn't say that, but he was taking piano at 5 and he was doing the thing, right? And so, but he, anyway, so he had gone on this this was probably, I'd been doing this, and if I had known how pivotal this was, I would have written it down better in a journal with dates. But at the time, it just felt like, oh, this just feels so good. And I didn't know where it was really going to lead. I didn't know what was going to happen. It just felt like the right thing to do. And, probably I say within a couple of months, he was out on a choir retreat. We lived in Tennessee at the time. He was in the Smoky Mountains at Gatlinburg at a cabin, and with his choir retreat. And one of the students was a photographer, and I was friends with her on Facebook too. And or maybe I wasn't, maybe she just tagged him. That's probably what happened. And, one day I was scrolling through Facebook. I'm not kidding, Brandon. Here is a picture of him out on a balcony overlooking this beautiful, that wasn't in my picture in my mind. It was just him, hands up in the air, face up to the light. It was the exact picture. The exact. I mean, I just burst into tears. I was just like,
incredible.
And actually this story isn't in the book. My love epiphany that I experienced is, but this story is just for your listeners here, because that was when I went, holy smokes. That is powerful. That vision that I had created and emotionally embedded and sent out into the ethers, into the universe, into his spirit, his consciousness, got it.
Yep.
On some level.
Wow.
And that's the phrase, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. This is how that could happen.
Yeah.
Don't ever approach it from fear or panic or worry or stress or anxiety, because you're just feeding it.
That's such a great story, because actually I had a question from a listener recently that was all about an issue with their child and how to deal with it. And, this is exactly what came to mind, and I haven't addressed it yet on the show, but it's when you realize how powerful you are to actually change how things show up in your world, it is... there's just story after story of this sort of thing where, and how what's happening behind the curtain, so to speak, is a whole nother conversation. I like to postulate that it's like you're shifting timelines where you're into a version of reality where you've literally stepped into the reality where this is no longer a problem, and you're seeing that version of your child. And, that's a whole nother conversation, but how it works is really irrelevant. The fact that it does work, and that you can create, these experiences that are apparently external of you is so empowering. And, it's just in your advice on how to do it is so important, because when things are going wrong, apparently it's so easy to get hung up on, all that was wrong with your son, right? And what are you going to attract more of in that instance? It's certainly, you almost have to ignore what's out there and focus on fully getting into vibrational alignment with what you want to see.
Absolutely. Yep.
What a wonderful story. It really is. And it's such a wonderful story and such a wonderful way to sort of wind this down. Kim, this has been an absolute pleasure to connect with you and get your insight into the monsters under the bed. I think, people have, knowing as the G.I. Joe episodes I used to watch as a kid used to say at the end, they'd give a lesson, and knowing is half the battle. And once you can become aware of this stuff, then you can start really focusing on, and I imagine in the book, you go into great detail on some of the techniques on how to sort of unwind a lot of this stuff. And I know you've touched on some of it here as well, but this is a huge thing to become aware of how we've been, programmed, and how to change all that.
And hopefully find some relief in just knowing that it was a wiring that you came. It's your default wiring that you didn't have anything to do with. So let go of some of that guilt and shame and judgment, because, okay, all right, now, thank you. Like, some people just need some breathing room, right? Like, we just need to be able to breathe about something, and then we're in survival mode so much of the time that, thank you for that little piece of relief. If that provides relief, then we can, move to the next thing of understanding more and a little more and a little more, to where your life's going to completely shift once you start having these ahas and understandings and do some of the things that we're talking about, which until you're not breathing enough, you're not going to do it, because you won't, it won't come natural for you, for sure.
Right. And that's a huge piece of the puzzle is this awareness. I mean, is there any other technique that you would, as we sign off here, that you'd want to leave folks with that is a helpful, practice to sort of, disempower these monsters, if you will? Take away the fangs.
The other thing that I think is the chatter issue. So here's a challenge for your listeners. Okay. If it's even just one day, or if you want to go a week, or however long you want to go, don't make it too long though. It'll feel too overwhelming. So just do one day. Do, like, when you're listening to this, you could start right now, or you could, start right now, because you won't remember tomorrow. So from listening to this on for like one day, give yourself 1 day challenge. And I want you to just notice, and you're going to notice by your emotion. Let your emotion be your the GPS signal that, something's here, and good or bad. Like, I'm not saying this is all negative. Your emotion you can have a happy emotion. You can feel really good about something. You just worked out. You had a great workout and you feel really accomplished and fun. And it was great. And I feel good. Like you got it. Those emotions, follow that thought and go, what gave me that emotion? And then follow the thought when you feel yucky. Like if you just had a fight with someone, or if you've just, whatever, however your emotion tells you, go follow it and just notice it. Watch and see if you can move to the observer instead of the aligner. So you can feel what you feel, but go to observe the thought that preceded it. Go, what did I think? Some days, Brandon, I'll just kind of have a wonky feeling. That's the word, wonky.
I love that word. I use it all the time.
Yeah, it fits. It's like, why am I wonky?
Yep.
Oh, okay. That's right. Yeah, that's happening over here with one of my kids, or this is happening over here with, a doctor's appointment, or this is happening with a friend of mine's life. Like, I got something going on in my with my thought that created the wonky feeling. And sometimes you can just go, okay, well, I'll just be wonky. You don't have to do anything about it. Just be wonky, but own that you are being wonky. Own that you know why you're being wonky. It's again, a taking responsibility. And if you want to be sad, be sad. There's nothing wrong with being sad. Be sad. It's a great emotion to feel sometimes. It's very healing. Feel sad and know why you're sad. Okay. If you're depressed, then give yourself permission to be depressed, but know why you're depressed. Go follow the thought that without judgment. The judgment is what does the damage.
Yeah.
The judgment is the damaging thing, not the actual thing. It's what you do with that actual thing that causes the bigger problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Acceptance, non-resistance, acceptance, moving into the observer, those will, just by doing that process, you're going to naturally discharge, a lot of the charge that is continuing to perpetuate that issue, right? And so it's almost like shining the light of awareness instantly. It's like bringing a light into the shadow. It's just the absence of awareness is really what the darkness is, right? You bring in the light and it sort of illuminates
what to do. Yeah. When you see it, okay, this is that next as important piece of it though. I see it. Oh, thank you. Go to a gratitude. Go to a thank you for letting me see it. Not, see, I suck. That's what people do. They see it. They'll know. They know what's there because the bloodhounds have brought them all the evidence their whole life of what's there. But it's what you do with once you see it. That's the key. Once you see it, love it because it's you hiding under the bed. Actually, it's just your scared little self that needs love. That's what's there.
Love transmutes everything. Love is the answer. Now, what was the question? Is my favorite quote.
Exactly. I love that. Yeah.
Oh, well, this has been so fascinating, Kim. I so appreciate you sharing your wisdom and light with all of us. And, I do have one last question, though, I'd like to leave you with. And it is it is this. In 60 seconds or less, what is the meaning of life, according to Kim Fiske?
Love. Unconditional love. There's just no other reality. There's no other truth. There's no other nothing. To your point, that's the answer. So what was the question? When you find yourself reacting with anything other than, 100% love, which just means non-judgment.
Yeah.
I believe the highest degree of love is awareness without judgment. Awareness. I don't have to agree with you. I don't have to, that's a different conversation over there that has nothing to do with I'm aware of you and I accept you. I'm aware and I hear you. I hear you and I'm aware. It was more than 60 seconds. Sorry, but I wasn't prepared for that specific question, but the point of it is still very true.
Yes, absolutely. And, to sort of tie it back in, it's like judgment is a confession of your character, and expectation is premeditated resentment. And if you can sort of become aware of these things and like, I don't want to participate. Yeah, I don't want to participate in this anymore. And you've really turned a whole new path. So thank you, Kim. You are such a light, and I look forward to our paths hopefully crossing in 3D at some point.
Oh, I do too. I do too. Thank you, Brandon. And thank you to everyone that take the time to listen to this. I'm hoping that I hope you go love the monster under your bed, honestly. So thank you for having me, Brandon.
Until next time, journey well.
Okay.
Well, everyone, that concludes this week's interview episode. If you have enjoyed this positive download from our hearts and minds to yours, please take a minute, give us a rating or review on iTunes. Since iTunes is the holy grail of all things podcasting, your good reviews help us to reach more listeners. Also, we would be extremely appreciative if you would tell your friends and family about the show. Our sincere intent with the Positive Head podcast is to spread positivity to the world because we're selfish, quite honestly. I say that jokingly, but really only halfway joking. I'm referring to the good kind of selfish based on the knowing that we all get what we give in this life, because when we give, we're actually always giving to extensions of self, since we're all really one in the same consciousness, just in different bodies. So if you want to be a good selfish along with us by helping to spread the positivity, by all means, please proceed to shout about the Positive Head podcast from your rooftop. Otherwise, as you continue on your fabulous journey in this 3D reality, be sure to remember this. As long as you ain't dead, you're already positive ahead. Journey well, everyone, and thank you for being.